So 6 years ago, I was a freshman in college and I got my very first set of Freeskates. But since there were hardly any tutorials online, I didn't really know where to begin. So this video is going to be the tutorial I wish I had as a college freshman. We're going to start with the very basics and then move all the way up to using the skates comfortably to get to class on campus. Towards the end of the video, we're going to go through some things you should avoid. Hey, stop it! When doing so. So obviously the first step in all of this is going to be acquiring some Freeskates, but soon after that, it's important to find the right location to learn. I actually didn't go to this college campus, so we're gonna find a spot together. So I was just sitting right over there at those tables, and right here is a nice wide open slope. It's smooth, has very little debris, but most importantly, it has a very slight decline, which is gonna help all of you later when it comes to gaining speed. You could try to learn on flat ground. I'll get to that a little later. It's possible, it's what I did, but we're gonna start with the decline. First things first, your skate is going to have a right or left marker at the bottom of the skate there. Please don't put them together wrong because people have done that in the past. As far as the direction you're heading, you can either go left foot forward or right foot forward. Just always make sure that right skate is under the right foot. It doesn't at all matter which way the skate is facing as long as it's on the correct foot. Today is going to be day one, or phase one as I'll call it. And within that, there's gonna be three important things: direction, foundation, and speed. So we're gonna start with the direction. You'll notice right here that my wheels are straight in line. A lot of people will set up the skates like this with the decks straight in line with each other. That's a no-no because what that does is creates an angle for the wheels to shoot you off in a different direction. So make sure those wheels are in a straight line. Second off is the foundation. Make sure you have your placement down every single time. It's going to make the learning process a lot more repeatable. You don't want your foot on the edge of the skate like this. You see the decks are kicked outward. Your feet are exactly lined up with the plate. And then to start off, lift whatever you decided was your front foot. Roll that front foot for a while to get a sense for your direction. And as long as you have that right foundation, you're ready to start giving yourself speed. Now this is where having a hill is going to help you a lot in the learning process. How we like to push off as free skaters is by raising our lead foot and then pushing off through the back, like so. The problem with that as a beginner is it's not the most intuitive motion when you start off, and it's hard to get a ton of speed. So this downhill is going to help you get a little more speed at the beginning and keep that speed throughout. If you try learning on flat, honestly what I would do is use pillars like the ones behind me to get yourself going again and again so that you can keep maintaining that speed. That's how I did it anyway, so we'll get to that next. But let's push off for the very first time. Roll, roll, and push. More realistically, this is how it usually looks like when people push off for the first time. Every single person learning Freeskates does that on their first go. A lot of people look down. That causes them to fall forward. Look forward, like in the direction of travel, and imagine a slack line drawn right in front of you, and try and balance along that line so as to not fall into a pit. So for the pillar method, this is exactly how I first learned to free skate outside of my dorm in college. So same thing, make sure your foundation and your direction are good. My wheels are in line, my feet are in line with the skates, and then you just get a solid push off this thing. So grab on, bring your toes up, and get a solid push. Ideally, as you go along, you can keep gaining speed. More realistically, what probably happens is you push, and then you either split or lose your direction, or you don't make it to the next pillar. In order to correct for this and fix your direction, you are going to learn how to turn the skates, which is not by leaning like you would on most any other board. The way you turn on free skates is by pivoting like this. When you're pushing down a hill or pushing along pillars, ideally you're trying to learn how to go in a straight line and learn how to balance, either by pointing your toes apart or together. So for example, if I want to turn that way, I'm going to point my toes together and also add a little bit of a lean so that I can fall in that direction. So point my toes together, and then alternatively, if I want to turn towards my back, I'll point my toes apart and then fall back in that direction. You don't need to do this if you're already going straight, just make sure you have that straight trajectory. So keep those three things in mind on day one. This is going to be direction, foundation, and speed. Literally, all you're trying to do is get acquainted with the skates, spend maybe 30 minutes to an hour. If you spend 5 minutes on this, well, good luck, but spend a solid amount of time on your first day getting used to the skates. You're gonna be a little sore afterwards, and then come back the next day and work on phase 2 or day 2. This doesn't have to be day 2, it was for me, but day 2 is going to be focusing on breaking free of any wall or friend that's helping you. Try and get that speed and stay upright all on your own without the help of any object or person. Next, you're gonna learn the motion, how to get those skates to go back and forth like you see the pros doing. And then next up, you're gonna wanna learn how to use that motion to gain speed. So to get that motion, you want to point your toes together and apart, just like with turning, just without the lean. What that's gonna do is throw your skates back and forth without actually turning your trajectory because you're not leaning and letting yourself fall in that direction. And by the way, this is assuming you got the first day down, pointing toes together, position 1, and apart, position 2. Together, apart, together, apart, together, apart, together, apart. Pretty soon, once you get comfortable with this, you'll want to learn how to gain speed. This is going to be pretty hard for you going uphill or even on flat ground. So try to stay on a slight decline and practice that pumping motion until you can feel it pushing you forward. That's going to be by push, pull, push, pull. You're going to feel tension between those skates when you're doing it correctly. So my feet are going like this, toes together, toes apart, toes together, toes apart. But it's not going to do anything unless you push and pull. In this dimension, push, pull, push. And look how much speed I already have. After you've learned how to do that downhill, you can try and do it on flat to see if you can still feel that. The idea is not to burn yourself out too quickly if you're just jumping right to trying to go uphill or even going on flat. Once you feel that speed kind of pushing you, gradually reduce the downhill to just flat, and then even go to slight uphills if you can handle it. And that's just going to gradually practice and strengthen your pumping technique. So phase 3 is going to be about day 3, at least for me, and the days following. And what I mean by that is using the skates to actually get to class.
Surely you cannot be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
You can do this like as you're learning, just make sure you are doing so safely. So what I did was when I barely knew how to pump, I would walk to class for a little bit, but on little stretches, I would skate for just a little bit of ways. Or if I had enough of a slight downhill stretch, I would just ride that out and just try to learn how to maneuver around campus. I think the best way to learn once you get to a certain level is just to learn by doing and throw yourself into that environment. You're only gonna learn so much on your driveway or outside of your dorm room. If you're at this point and you genuinely don't feel like you're ready to start doing this, go back to the learning process, step 1 and step 2, and then come back to this when you're ready. So as soon as you can, make sure you are getting the skates out, using them for small stretches. And the great thing about Freeskates is they're so freaking tiny. Throw them in your backpack if you don't want to ride them, or just carry them by your side. Trust me, eventually you're not going to want to do that though. They'll become an extension of your body and you'll be riding around. So as far as what to do on phase 3, it's going to depend on your campus. So depending on where you live, your campus might be super flat if you live in a flat area like the Midwest or something like that. In that case, all of the learning stuff pretty much applies the same. The problem is going to be if there are hills on your campus, and you're just going to have to tackle this a bit differently. If your campus is hilly, then you're going to want to learn how to go up hills and go down hills safely. For downhills, I would recommend learning how to carve, and that's by taking super wide turns on either a safe road or just empty, wide path. And make sure you utilize the entire path. I'm talking like the whole thing. Eventually, you can start digging that back foot into the pavement just very slightly, and you know you're doing it right when you hear this beautiful sound. I think the important thing with downhill is you obviously don't want to send yourself flying down a steep hill like I did when I was first learning. Know your limits. Before you get going too fast, just step off your skates. If it's a hill you know you can't handle, pick up the skates, walk, especially if you don't know how to carve yet. That'll come later in your free skating journey. We're just trying to learn today. So with going uphill, I would recommend what I was saying earlier about gradually increasing that incline to bigger and bigger uphills. So that's why I said this is day 3 and the days following. This is going to be day 5, week 5, month 5. That progression is just going to continue so long as you took this initial 3 days to a week effort to first learn the basics. For some context around how you may handle hills maybe 6 months from now, it's going to be sharp carves going downhill to maintain and check your speed, and then going uphill. This is at about a 10 to 15 degree incline. So what I'm going to do is, instead of hitting it head on, I'm going to pump from side to side pretty heavily and focus on going in like a zigzag pumping motion, kind of like this. So as far as maneuvering around campus on your Freeskates, I do have some important tips written down. Number one is using both feet to evenly power yourself around campus. I was guilty of only using my front foot when I would skate around campus, and you can do that. It's totally fine. There are no rules to free skating, but if you want to be efficient and go theoretically, I guess, twice as fast, use both of your skates to power yourself, and your form is going to thank you for it and be a lot more symmetrical. Next up is learning to bend your knees and keep them bent, especially when you're going over obstacles like bumps and cracks. Freeskates are great at doing so as long as you know what to expect and watch the ground in front of you. Another important thing is never be afraid to jump off the skates to reset. If you're ever feeling comfortable in this learning process or just ever with free skating, you can step off. That's like a great thing about them. Next up is learn how to do the stomp to start. This is like a super flashy way to get going. So when you're leaving skates and everybody else is just kind of walking with their own 2 feet like a boring person, you can whip out your free skates and throw them down immediately if you know how to do so. Super flashy, good way to make friends, and it just looks really cool and feels cool too. So we have a tutorial on the stomp. I'll link all these things I'm talking about below. But next up is learning how to do the T-stance. The T-stance is super cool because it allows you to stop and talk to your friends or stop and do anything really without stepping off your skates, which is great. So with a T-stance, you just point your skates at a 90-degree angle. Next up is testing out different terrains to see what you're comfortable with. So in your off time, between periods, or just on a weekend or something, it helps to skate around and test out different terrains like brick or smooth concrete or really rough concrete and see what you as a skater can handle. So when you are actually going to class or commuting over unfamiliar terrain, you can kind of scope things out and with your eyeballs kind of see if you can handle what's coming ahead of you. Now this brings me to some of the things you should definitely avoid when free skating around campus. I kind of already touched on hills, so that is definitely one of them. Don't send yourself barreling down a hill.
Oh my gosh, there's sticks and twigs. I don't know about this kid. One of us is gonna eat it. Maybe we don't do this.
For number two, it's fun to skate campus and snake in and out of crowds, but definitely do so with caution. The nature of free skates is throwing your feet back and forth, and if you're not paying enough attention, you might swing your skate into a girl's ankle, just like I did in college, and she won't be very happy. Or whoever you hit is not going to be very happy. So have spatial awareness is the solution to that. Make sure you're aware with how wide your stance is, and feel free to narrow that stance, especially if you're in a crowd. Third thing to avoid is debris, bumps, and cracks. So like I said earlier, your skates can handle this stuff.
You know when you go to the chiropractor's office and they have the board that vibrates and you're supposed to stand on it and it like makes your whole body like vibrate a little bit? No, that's what this is. It's like, oh, now I got a nice,
I would say the debris is the worst out of all three, just because it's the most unexpected. So you might think you can roll over a stick, but if you've ever skateboarded, you know that a stick or a pebble is just, it's gonna throw you off your board or your skates in this case. But also bumps and cracks, this is just gonna be a learning process of what to expect. I would say starting out, especially if you're going really fast, assume that you won't go over it if you're like a little bit unsure. As you progress with skating, you're going to be able to kind of scope out these bumps and cracks and see if it's too big, and in that case, go around it, or if you can't go around it, slow way down and just try and tug your skates over that crack just to see if it works. Otherwise, avoid it. If it's like this massive ledge that you know is going to throw you off, step off your skates, step back on, and you'll be good. Number 4 is incredibly important. Do not take your eyes off the path, especially when you're on unfamiliar terrain. I think the reason for this is pretty obvious. I mean, you don't want to hit an unexpected obstacle, and if you're going at campus commute speeds, which these things can go, they're speedy, that unexpected obstacle is going to throw you into the ground like on any other board. So look at the ground. That's going to solve like 99% of your falls. Number 5 is a bit of a unique one to areas of weather. That is going to be water and ice. Avoid it. Don't skate over water, and especially don't do what I did and try to skate on ice, like a sheet of ice in the winter. The main reason for avoiding water is it rusts your bearings, and your skates are going to slow down over time, and you're just going to have to buy new bearings, or at the very least, clean them. Another thing to consider here with this whole learning process is you are literally exercising a muscle, like the muscles in your legs. Over time, you're just gonna get better as long as you flex that muscle, just like you're going to the gym. The thing I would avoid is quitting free skating too early because you think it's not possible for you. Everyone I know that's stuck with it has been so glad they did. They're either using skates for exercise, commute to college, just overall fun with their friends. And if you want to see an example of someone cruising around a college campus and having a whole lot of fun, I would check out this video right here.